our freely elected representatives adopt this constitution as the supreme law of the Republic.
Mandela eventually signed the constitution into law.
And so it has come to pass that South Africa today undergoes a rebirth.
It is a day of celebration.
Constitution that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation.
Every citizen is equally protected by law.
One of the best constitutions in the world.
So my name is Tracy Gumete. I am an activist, a queer scholar within UKZN, working very closely with the Ujamaa Centre, which is a research institution that is based at the school but does a lot of practice work, a lot of action and reflection that is community-based and contextual, intersecting between faith, justice and lived realities, and bringing that into conversation with the understanding that you cannot really transform communities without really interacting with the bodies that are most affected by the injustices that we see, informed by faith, informed by theological interpretations, informed by theological practices. So our work is mostly just bringing all of that in conversation with each other and working in community to make sure that we transform the lived realities of people within these contexts. The Eudy Simelane Memorial Lecture is an act of resistance, remembering and reimagining. It's remembering the embodied realities of the queer community, remembering the trauma, the woundedness, the hurts. It is remembering the voices that were sidelined and erased, especially the life of Eudy Simelane, who was an activist, a change maker, and someone who brought the lived realities of those that are usually pushed to the margins, silenced, and made invisible in our society. So the theme for the Eudy Simelane Memorial Lecture this year focuses on LGBTIQA+, religion, violence, and governance. And it comes into a very important conversation right now around the intersecting factors that are contributing to homophobic violence within our current context. There's a huge gap between the lived realities and what is existing within our policies and laws. And this is a thing of behavior and attitudes that we still need to address in the work that we are doing, that we are actively doing through the work of contextual Bible study and through the work that we do with the Eudy Simelane Lecture. It also speaks to how faith does violence, religion, how we engage with biblical interpretation, how we engage with theological resources. This is a problem that is affecting queer lives, realities, and marginalizing a number of identities across the board. This is why this year's speaker is very important to the conversation, because we need to realize that we cannot change or transform our context only from the ground. We need people at a higher level who are placed in spaces of influence, such as this year's speaker, Deputy Minister Steve Letsike, based in the Office of the Presidency under the Women, Youth and People with Disabilities portfolio. Having the Deputy Minister part of the space not only brings us in connection with government, but also brings us in connection with the lived realities that she has also engaged, brings us in connection with some of the harms and some of the stories that she has also been able to capture within the field and has brought to government. So having that speaking from her level gives an idea that government has placed people who are resources in change making, in policy making, and people who will interrogate and make sure that we re-examine the factors, the laws, the policies, and re-examine the gap that we need to close between LGBTI realities and the human rights that are so beautifully written in our constitution but are not fully realized.
I am Mmapaseka Steve Letsike. I am the Deputy Minister in the Presidency, responsible for women, youth, and persons with disability in South Africa. I'm a human rights advocate. I have been in the social justice movement at least for the last 20 years. So it gives me so much joy to join the Eudy Lecture, to coming here and speak about the life of Eudy. And I remember very well, I was there on the 28th of April. I was in Guatemala when Eudy's body was found. I was there to negotiate in schools of Guatemala, how do we end bullying in schools. When I received the call that Eudy's body was found, and we drove to where the body was found. And I think it's this reflection that, you know, when you reflect on it and you're saying, until when do we have to go and see a lifeless body of a queer person? That body is important, that life is important, it deserves to live. And yeah, we're here. I think for me there are two levels of this importance. Is to highlight the reality of hate crimes in South Africa, and that still exist even today in 2025. And it's also to lift why this hate crime happens. And no doubt it's because of homophobia, it's because of transphobia, but it's also about the existence of gender-based violence, and that is regarded a pandemic in South Africa. But the lecture itself allows us to keep Eudy's memory alive. It allows us to reflect on who Eudy was, not only just to herself and her family, but who Eudy was in South Africa. Not just a woman born in Guatemala, but she was a soccer player. She was a nation builder. She was a daughter to her family. She was a friend, she was a sister. She was a queer activist. And I think the people in South Africa and globally deserves to hear about who Eudy Simelane was, and deserves to know the truth to her life, but to the realities that many queer people still experience. For so many aching years, LGBTI people have been silenced. They have been pushed out in society, and this silence has wrought injustice, has costed lives. It has been deemed un-African, and even you continue to see, whether in person or online, that LGBTI people experience stigma and discrimination. And this is the same country that has a constitution that became the first in the world to protect persons on the basis of their sexual orientation. So for me, you reflect on the legal framework, and that we definitely know that protection is in the law. But protection is not only the one piece that we need. Protection that means a daily life of individual goes beyond the legal framework. That you protect them because they are human beings and their rights should not be violated. And when you look at this experience and you ask yourself a question, why is this happening? I think one should not try to shy away to name things as they are, that we still have the legacy of colonialism that exists. And that legacy had deemed to have oppressive system in it that made people doubt who they are, that interrogated and built inferior and complex things that often people, when they reflect, you doubt whether, as a black person, you know, why were we told for the longest time that white is better? Why are we told for the longest time that women must submit? Why are we told the only normal way is to being heterosexual? These are oppressive systems, but they are systems. People design rules, they design a particular way of living, expression, and that on its own creates instability amongst people. The rot in society exists. It's deep. And the way it's deep, you can't change this overnight. It was protected legally. It was taught daily using religion, using culture and tradition. Those two social institutions still hold so much power, so much influence, that your message today, you have to say it every day to change the hearts and minds of the people, to saying there are alternative learning. That even when you're saying the two institutions, there's nothing wrong even with religion or culture, there's nothing wrong. It's that culture and religion mustn't be weaponized to actually destroy people. And we find this a lot, that why hate crimes, why violence exists, it's these systems of oppression, its attitude, its behavior, its acts, its victimization, its judgment that leads to the actual act of victimization itself. The intersection of religion and the lives of LGBTI persons. First, I think there must be a sense of appreciation, particularly if you have, or if you come from a family or community of faith. You are brought up into a particular doctrine. Now, what does this mean for a young young person, even before I identified as a lesbian myself, because I think one only discovers that they are lesbian when they start being attracted to the next person. And I want to reflect back to my childhood as just an ordinary girl who just didn't want to conform to, you know, the way one has to express as being a girl child in the house. What does it mean? I said the first thing that I refused to do was wearing a skirt. I just didn't understand why. Why should we be subjected to a skirt or a dress? So, and both churches required, the code of conduct was exactly that. And I constantly asked my faith leader, what am I bringing to church? And that was a big question for me. What am I bringing really as a church leader, as a reverend? What are you looking for me to commit to this church? And he said, your heart. And I was convinced, and I said, it's my heart that I'm bringing to church. And if you are going to influence my thinking and the way I see being in the faith base, it had to do with my heart. It had to do with my mind. So why does it matter for me to wear my pants and still keep the same heart? And I'm reflecting on this because it's important to me, because even my own gender expression as an 8-year-old was interrogated, as a 10-year-old, as an 11-year-old. And to a day when I confirmed in church, it had a lot to do with what was I wearing. Did it change my heart? It didn't. And I think many gay and lesbian people in the country and globally, they are questioned because of their expression, the way they dress. But for a moment, I think people must question their hearts. And if queer people's hearts are not the kind of hearts that embodies the image of God, then we have something to then interrogate. But the religious and the faith space have rejected queer people, not because of their hearts, but they've rejected because of what they believed they represent, and which is often the standards that they've set to what women and men should look like, a heteronormative picture. We live in a country that is already violent and has a history of violence. You know, I was speaking about apartheid. It was violent. It took a lot from people. And when you experience violence, if you don't heal, if you don't get to be aware, if you don't have that level of consciousness, if we don't deal with mental health, if we don't deal with substance abuse, you know, all of those things, we're going to see a full cycle of violence. And that's the kind of our society currently. We have a democracy in this country that seeks to have everybody, doesn't matter, black, white, young, old, thrive. But everybody must thrive. And this is why, for me, it disturbs me that every single day, every time we hear about murder, brutal murder of LGBTI people like Mohsin, people like Eudy, it's going on. It's continuing. It's not stopping. The role of governance is that, yes, you can introduce the law. Yes, you can have programs and interventions to help us. But also what we know is that we are not able and we are not going to regulate what happens in the homes. But we are able to deal with how we assist families into their well-being. And also when victimization happens, there's a response. And we've got a government that cares, that spends so much money to building awareness, deal with cyber bullying, deal with school bullying and so forth. But we also want parents, guardians, families, society, religious leaders, every member of society to play their role. And that for me is key. And those are some of the gaps that exist in society. But we also want men, which are predominantly the biggest perpetrators, to stop. We need to care what happens to a boy child, what happens to a man, because if we do not support men as well, they become monsters. If we don't care about their well-being, they become things that we don't want in society. So while we care about everybody else, we still also have to care about them so that they end violence. They must help us end violence. I grew up in politics. I was 13 when I joined ANC. So here I am, so many years later, a queer person who has been doing activism, who has been protecting human rights. I started the only existing queer law clinic in the country. And I'm now having left civil society space into government space. Why does it matter? It matters. It matters not only just on my experience and qualification or my expertise, it matters to have a queer person who's a template to young queer persons. It also matters to people my age who are queer and who can still see themselves. It matters to older queer people. We do have older queer people who, many of them also mentored me. It matters to see what they have also produced. It's necessary to show up and be visible. It mattered for Eudy Simelane to play soccer and to thrive and represent the nation. It mattered to have many queer people who are leading in business. It matters because we fought for the liberation of queer people, and we are still fighting for a total liberation. So I really do think, even in my own government that is led by a champion, a human rights champion like President Mmapaseka, the fact that he himself could choose to appoint an openly queer person in his cabinet, for me it matters. I think the first thing for me, we've called for a whole of society to respond to gender-based violence, to deal with the root causes. No doubt we need everybody. We do need government, we do need religious leaders, we need traditional leaders, we need families, we need social workers, we need people. First, there must be urgency because we're losing lives. Even when you have survivors, their dignity is stripped off. As a survivor myself, it takes a lot to overcome this. What helps us to heal and what helps us to restore peace within self. Because our minds are busy, our souls are disrupted, our bodies are sites of crime. Our society can be better to prevent. We can set up safe spaces, for people to prevent gender-based violence, to prevent hate crimes. We can raise awareness and educate society, sensitize service providers. What should happen in church or in spaces of faith gathering that also guarantees you that this is a safe space. Let's bring you closer to God. And you feel that we are representing that safe space of faith and restore healing. When there's a case, there must be justice. So that means there must be conviction. And many of the challenges that we have, Eudy's case took so many years to complete. But we've seen successes of our law system. When we did Amendment of Sexual Offences Act, amendment of our criminal procedure, that in 2019, there was a case of a gang rape against a lesbian woman in Pretoria. That case was completed and reached conviction within a year. So something right is happening. It's whether we are actually enforcing our laws in the same manner that people can feel justice. So that's what I want to imagine: a free society, a safe environment. I want to see South Africans and the rest of the global world thrive and see each other, value each other. And that's what we should all be doing. We can be happy even when we have different ways of living, but we can have a happy society. I think the screening of Eudy Simelane's lecture during 16 days of activism, it's important to showcase different types of conversations we must have around gender-based violence. That is not just gender-based violence or violence against women that happens because of what you are wearing or because of how men view you, but it's also because of your sexual orientation, your gender identity or expression that may put you at risk. Showcasing Eudy's story was not just about Eudy, it was about LGBTI people and their families and their allies. And I really do think the work that Ujamaa is doing and the work of all the stakeholders that are involved in this work helps us to appreciate why it matters that everybody must raise awareness, must educate, and we must continue talking until we stop violence.
Ndingumuntu.
I am human.
Ngingumuntu.
I am human.
Ngimuntu.
I am human.
Ngiwumuntu.